From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Monday, February 13th, 2023. If you're watching this video to find out if we're finally going to bring some moisture into portions of Alberta and Saskatchewan that badly need it, we are not going to do that this week. It's going to be another mild week in many areas. Temperatures already above freezing in parts of central and southern Alberta. Southwestern Saskatchewan will continue to be mild through probably the end of the week. Maybe the weekend. We'll see some colder air work its way in next week. We'll look at the satellite picture here early on Monday morning. We've got a system making its way through the prairie right now, bringing some windy conditions to portions of southern Alberta. Also some snow to the higher elevations there. We'll flip over and look at the radar here early Monday morning. This is around 7 o'clock Central Time. Maybe some light snow falling in Edmonton down toward Red Deer. Wouldn't rule out a few snowflakes in Calgary today. Same thing up toward the Grand Prairie area, but not a lot in the way of accumulating snow across the prairie. A lot of this is going to be across the higher elevations. And then north of the prairie, we'll see a little streak of snow there. So these are the two corridors where you can expect some accumulating snow. But over the prairie here again, the chance for some snowflakes, especially over the next 24 hours, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday looking pretty quiet across the prairie. Total snowfall accumulation on the left, NAM, on the right, the European model. This is through Thursday afternoon. Again, some snow in the higher elevations here over the next 24 to 36 hours. We'll see a little streak of snow across northern portions of the prairie provinces, but the prairie proper going to be left out of the accumulating snow here as we head through the next 5 days or so. And as we take it all the way through Sunday, this is the next 7 days, still keeping that hole across the prairie for the most part. Again, maybe Grand Prairie seeing some snow here, especially as we get toward the weekend and maybe early next week. Calgary maybe picking up a little bit of snow here, but a big chunk of the prairie looking at, no snow or maybe a light coating here as we get some of these flurries to work their way through. As we look at the next week, it's really going to be dominated by two features across North America. It's this first cutoff situated across the southwest U.S. today. This would be today in the left side. And then we've got this system right now that's making its way across kind of the Pacific coast here with Western Canada and the Pacific Ocean. Part of that bringing the light snow to portions of far western Alberta and the higher elevations there, and the windy conditions across southwestern portions of Alberta here on Monday. These two systems link up, though. This one kind of dives south, links up with, and kind of kicks, I shouldn't say links up with, it kind of kicks the first system out before the next trough digs in. These are really going to be big disruptive weather events across the United States here, but the pattern continues to just kind of reset with these systems coming up over the ridge to our west. They dive in across the central and southern U.S., and then as we get into the weekend, late week, we see ridging kind of rebuilding here across the prairie. So this leads to a mild and quiet midweek for us across the prairie. We can animate this just looking at, the next 10 to 15 days. And what we see here is eventually we'll start to build a bigger trough here across portions of Western Canada and the northwestern U.S. This is mostly going to allow some colder temperatures to come back in. This does not pivot us into a really favorable pattern to get robust moisture into the area. We will see an increased chance for some lighter snow as we see an increase in storm systems making their way through. But again, not the right trajectory. If I just pause this as it gets toward the end of this loop, let's go ahead and let it get toward the weekend. Let's see here. This would be the end of the week here. Getting into early next week, and we're looking at this in 5-day increments, so kind of smoothing it out and getting rid of some of the detail there. But again, even as we get toward the weekend into early next week, that flow coming over the top of a ridge to our west and then down around the base of that trough. So this is more inclined to bring us colder air, whereas the storm track is still, we want that storm track doing something like this. This is still going to give us more of a northwesterly component to those storm tracks, still going to send much of the heavier precipitation down to our south across portions of the central and southern United States. We'll animate that, and as you just look at the next 10 to 15 days from the European ensemble, you really see this corridor right here being the most active. But as we get into the early part of next week, you can see a little bit of an increase in systems coming over the top of that ridge across the Pacific. So again, an increased chance for some light doses of snow, but not a total pattern fix that's going to bring in that last dose of robust, we want to get some snowpack in southern Alberta. You guys know this. I'm not talking to anyone, who doesn't know what we need here, but I guess what I can tell you is this is not going to be the pattern that we need. Again, a chance for some light doses of snow next week, but if we just kind of zoom out and look at the whole picture, what we want to see, if we were going to get a storm track that brought in heavy doses of moisture here, which I still think is on the table as we get deeper into the end of winter, early spring, just not on the table here in the next 2 weeks. Again, what we would want to do is develop a trough, an area of low pressure here across the Pacific between Alaska and Hawaii. We would then get storm systems that would come in from California. They would lift across the Rockies and into the Prairie. That would bring those heavier doses of precipitation, whether it's heavy snow or heavy rain, depending on what kind of temperature pattern we have in here. That's the storm track we would want, but we keep reverting back to this ridge across the Pacific, so we get little disturbances riding over the top of that ridge, bringing us those shots of cooler air, light doses of snowfall. So it's simply more of the same here, a chance for some precipitation, but not really looking at that heavy swath of precipitation. We'll just look at the European model the next 10 days verbatim. I'll bring it back here to Monday. Here's that chance for some, I apologize, this is actually an old loop that I left in there. We'll go back to the precipitation loop that I just showed you here. This one can kind of show you the timing on when I think we might get a slightly better chance for some precipitation, if you bear with my clicking here. So again, we see that chance for some light snow initially this week. Monday, I already told you, most likely in the higher elevations, before high pressure brings us a pretty quiet mid part of the week. This is Tuesday into Wednesday. Here's that interaction to the south, the first storm system lifting through, and then the next one that comes around on the backside and then lifts in here. You can see the date up here. This would be Thursday and Friday. This is when we are quietest across the Prairie. And then as we get into the weekend, this is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you can see the ridge of high pressure across the Pacific Ocean. Disturbances coming over the top of that ridge, making their way into the Prairie, bringing us those chances for some light snow across the region. So then this really kind of sums it up, ties it all together. Over the next 10 days, the probability of picking up 3 inches of snow or more. The 2 corridors where that's most likely, higher elevations where systems ride up over the top of the ridge and come into the mountainous areas of British Columbia and far western Alberta, into the northern and central Rockies. These systems then race off to the east, northeast, with heavy snow on the north side of that across portions of the upper Midwest into the Great Lakes. So we simply get missed and left out here across the Prairie. We're going to have to wait and be patient, again, with La Nina pulling back. I invite you to take a look at the video Eric shared Thursday night, his longer range weather analysis. It does cover the pattern here across North America. And again, what I was going to say there is we pull back La Nina, that opens us up to a more variable weather pattern. We allow the MJO to kind of take hold here at times. And this gives us more of a sub-seasonal pattern where we get some variety every 1 to 2 to 3 weeks. So while the next 2 weeks, again, I've got more bad news for you if you want some moisture, they're not favorable. I continue to remain optimistic that we will get there. It's just looking like we're going to have to kick this can down into March, perhaps early April, before we get that really favorable pattern to bring some swaths of heavier precipitation. So the next 10 days, not happening. But if you had to ask me, I still remain optimistic that we'll get it. We'll come out of this winter and into the spring with much more optimistic soil moisture conditions here. So again, I'm teasing with the optimism. Even though we don't quite see it there, there's reason to believe that we'll get there. Where we will also get over the next 5 to 10 days is a colder pattern. We've had mild temperatures in place here recently. We're going to finally see some cooler air come back into the region as we develop that trough temporarily across the region, allowing that cooler air to spill back in. What does that look like? Well, highs above freezing in Calgary through the weekend, dropping back down below freezing for those afternoon highs as we get into next week. Here is your next 10 days in Edmonton, Saskatoon, Regina, and then Winnipeg. Very similar look, pretty mild over the next 5 to 7 days. Overall, a little bit of a cooler shot of air Wednesday and Thursday off to the east in Winnipeg, but then a big transition toward a colder pattern, at least temporarily, across the entirety of the Prairie as we get into February 25th through the 25th. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you again next Monday.